Deming says, "Without data, you are only an opinion." And I study the data in statistical programs to find the problems in the factory. I apply the Lean Six Sigma methodology developed by General Electric and Motorola.
In addition, I'm certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt by the University of Tokyo.
And follow the recommendations of the Lean Enterprises.
Oh, what a mess. Now everyone's talking and listening about lean. Lean over here and lean over there. But what's lean? What's lean manufacturing? And what is lean management? Is there a unified vision of what lean is? What's the final objective and what does lean intend? Also, all those words in Japanese that these experts use in lean. Why isn't lean in Japanese like Kaizen, Kanban, Gemba, and many other words of Japanese origin? To understand all this mess, we have to travel back in time and find ourselves in the years before the Second World War. On the one hand, to see what was happening in Japan, and on the other, to see what was happening in the United States. In the United States in those days, mass production was in full form. And while in the automotive industries of the United States, quantity was synonymous with quality, in Japan, this mass production was in question, mainly due to the scarcity of raw materials. In those years, the control of raw materials, and especially steel, was the difference between the management approaches of the Japanese and the American industry, which was deepened by the United States after the Second World War. In this way, the Japanese industry valued the inventory as tremendously expensive and included it in a category that denominated with the Japanese word muda, that means waste, garbage, or something unnecessary. Thus, as early as 1936, Kiichiro Toyoda asked his engineers to design a factory without inventory. Without inventory? That was against all of the learnings present in the industrial world at that time. However, Kiichiro Toyoda considered the inventory as the biggest muda and cause of other mudas in the factory. And one of those engineers who received the order from Toyoda was the pioneer of the great changes that were coming to Toyota and that were incorporated in 1942 as head of the machine shop. That engineer was Taiichi Ohno. Taiichi Ohno identified the 7 mudas that Toyota spoke of: inventory, time, unnecessary inventory relocation, waiting between processes, overproduction or producing more than necessary, overprocessing or performing operations without value, and defects. The ultimate goal is a just-in-time production system, or JIT. That's why since the 40s and the beginning of the 70s, in Japan, they fought mercilessly against inventory to increase their level of quality. In the United States, meanwhile, the golden years were being lived and bigger and heavier cars being manufactured, and the mass production of the large automotive companies turned them into the big 3: General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. But in the late 70s, and after the first oil crisis and the great triumphs of the economy of the United States, the industry suffered a rise in costs and was trying to design new saving strategies based on offshoring to countries with lower labor costs. The small and reliable Japanese cars and even European ones were despised by the buyer of the first economy in the world. However, in the 1980s, Japanese manufacturers needed to be more competitive every day, so they worked on improving their special production system based on just-in-time shortage. And finally, they began to make investments in the USA, Canada, and Europe, in the form of alliances with local companies, as the only way to achieve greater market shares in those closed economies of the time. In 1984, Toyota went into a joint venture alliance with General Motors at NUMI, or New United Motor Manufacturing, in California, based at an old General Motors plant closed 2 years earlier. In this way, General Motors intended to copy and paste the unique Toyota production system in a factory they intended to build as an exact mirror in Brazil. Thus, General Motors would be made in the special way of Toyota. While General Motors was rubbing their hands, in Toyota, they were very calm. At the same time, in 1979, MIT began the first phase of its program of study of the special competitiveness of the Japanese automotive industry, under the name of the International Motor Vehicle Program, or IMVP. The project was funded with $5 million at the time by MIT, also known as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This first phase concluded with the publication of the book The Factory That Changed the World in 1991. In this book, the concept lean manufacturing for the first time refers to the JIT production system of Japanese automotive manufacturers. In this deployment of NUMMI within Toyota, it was fortunate for Master Koichi Kimura to participate, intervening in several developments in California and Mexico, and being permanently accompanied by an engineer from General Motors for teaching and learning. However, despite the initial success of NUMMI as the plant with the highest quality levels of the group, General Motors had not yet managed to implement this productive system in the rest of their plants. And although some of the engineers trained in NUMMI had some success in introducing the approach in their factories in Brazil, this success was quickly forgotten and ended with the rescue of General Motors after its bankruptcy in 2009. This alliance also took place in Australia in 1996 under the name of the UAAI and in Canada under the name CAMI. These agreements were between General Motors and Suzuki. Since 2009, Suzuki has been 100% owned by General Motors. So, can it be copied and pasted as GM intended? Well, it turns out, no. Toyota's production system doesn't work as General Motors believed. Well, in reality, there is no total production system, or TPS, as the Japanese call it in their own environment, because they do not use the word lean. Shortly after concluding the IMVP study at MIT, J.P. Womack and some colleagues founded the Lean Enterprise Institute. Its goal was to distribute and collaborate in the dissemination of the lean manufacturing that they had studied. Now, to solve the failure in the cut and paste that General Motors tried, the people of MIT adapted the production system of Toyota to the rational culture of the United States. Without a doubt, a good idea based on the short-termism that prevailed in the 80s and 90s in the United States. Remember that it was the time of the yuppies. Let's see an example. The Value Stream Map tool with the acronym VSM is a tool designed by MIT. But it's non-existent in the Toyota production system, and in similar ones like Sumitomo, Denso, Honda, and so on. So, is it necessary then? Really, the Toyota production system and the lean manufacturing or lean management of J.P. Womack are different. Even in the 1980s, also from General Electric and Motorola, deepens in the statistical control of quality with the development of techniques called Six Sigma. The union of what the Lean Enterprise Institute and the MIT called Lean and the statistical quality control of General Electric and Motorola created what's now called Lean Six Sigma, meaning to apply the learnings of lean manufacturing and management, and Six Sigma to make Lean Six Sigma. From this development came the certification called belts: Green Belt, Black Belt, and Master Black Belt. In these certifications, you get taught a lot of statistics, but not a lot of lean. But these certifications have been adjusted to different curriculums, with few or no elements in common. What a mess. Now, the lean manufacturing that MIT studied and adapted to the rational culture of the United States, founded on incomplete studies of the production system of Toyota, has been expanded with the statistical control of processes of the Six Sigma methodology. These methodologies can help to achieve higher quality, but unfortunately they don't follow the direction of the excellent Japanese companies which they intended to emulate. These companies don't consider lean as a method, nor the statistical quality control as necessary tools. These excellent and successful Japanese companies trust in Kaizen, continuous improvement, and the participation of all in the management to achieve a total quality. Although the lack of a defined knowledge structure and the orientation, even in a small scale, of what's known as Lean and Lean Six Sigma are an obstacle to achieve Kaizen and total participation. And finally, we're in 2011, when Sensei Koichi Kimura begins giving us his research on the Total Production System, or TPS, that makes these Japanese corporations excellent, and once inside them, learn directly from the pioneers. In his written teachings, Sensei Koichi Kimura gives us the correct way to reach the levels of quality and productivity of the Japanese industry without filters or deformations. We scratch off the words lean manufacturing and management and Lean Six Sigma. This new knowledge created during the past 60 years in Japan has been structured in an unprecedented way, thanks to its experience as an internal and external consultant in more than 11 different countries. This exchange of cultures facilitated the identification and structuring of organizational concepts that these Japanese companies use in their internal management and production systems. Thus, Sensei Kimura defines and structures many concepts, such as the pyramid of the total productive system, the factory management framework, and has been able to define the same concept of excellence and many other structures and systems, truly delving into the systems of the excellent Japanese companies. Thus, after much study, spread, and structure the teachings of Koichi Sensei Kimura, this is how we created the Factory Management Institute and its structure of training and certification at the international level of recognition of university credits. We set the bar very high, but not higher than the level of our sensei. This is the scale of recognition of university credentials that we're developing at the Factory Management Institute. And to develop and adapt all the knowledge to the different degrees and manuals of implementation, we've developed a free certification route for anyone who wishes to obtain the qualification of sensei and collaborate in the adaptation of their teachings towards the creation of practical systems and manuals, books, online courses or MOOCs, implementation routes, and more.